Welcome everybody to the February meeting of the ANC3D Transportation Committee. And I trust you all have the agenda and other papers that we've sent out. And in the first category of welcome and just review of the agenda, the first thing I want to do is turn to Chuck to make a welcome statement.
Yes, well, Andrew Davis has said he would like to join our committee, and he is very welcome. He's our newest commissioner on ANC3D, and really happy to have you, and appreciate your being able to put your time into this.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. Yeah, looking forward to doing what I can to help out, for sure.
So, yes, and thank you, Andrew, for joining this merry band here. Already you have been a consistent contributor, so thank you.
Okay.
On the agenda today, we have three major topics we want to go over. First, some of the aspects of the New Mexico Avenue and Arizona Avenue projects, and then a fairly quick report out on the DDOT oversight hearing that was last Friday. And then we want to spend the bulk of the time on ANC3D priorities that were on the list that the Commission approved in January, which has some items that we've been working on already, but also some brand new ones. And that's where I want to take most of our time today. But any other questions about the agenda, things you want to add to it, comments you want to make before we get started, announcements that everyone needs to hear? Okay. Welcome, Nick Keenan. Nice to see you again. So why don't we just jump right in? I'm very glad that we've got both Mike Goodnow and Kristen Panero on the line today with us. And I asked Mike if first he would just talk about some of the things that have happened in the last couple of months in terms of adjustments on the New Mexico Avenue project, and then getting going on the evaluation and just how they plan to do that with a little group of people from this committee that have agreed to help. And then on Arizona Avenue, unfortunately, Karen McAllister is not able to join us. So I don't know if Mike is going to fill in for her on Arizona or if Christian, but between them, I hope that they can tell us a few things about that. So, Mike, do you want to come on the camera and talk to us?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. I do apologize. I'm on my work computer, the desktop, and I do not have a camera on here.
Oh, okay.
So you'll just have to see my name on the screen.
Well, we know
Sorry
your
about
voice.
that.
We know your voice, so we know it's you.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
We need a new increase so that you can get a camera. We'll have to, Christian, see what you can do about put in a word at the top there.
I did put in an IT request. I have not heard back yet. So maybe I'll just start with what I call the punch list on New Mexico Avenue in Tunlaw that I put in a couple of weeks ago. That really just consisted of signs down on Tunlaw. We had some incorrect parking signs. There were some areas that were supposed to be RPP parking that were just signed unrestricted parking. Other areas that were unrestricted that were signed RPP. We also had a few old signs that needed to be taken down, like old pedestrian signs for some slip lanes that we closed down at 39th Street. Also, what else do I have here? Some parking blocks that were missing down by 42nd Street. missing pedestrian sign over at Garfield Street, a couple missing blocks along the corridor, one by 43rd Street, some missing bike route signs. And so I put that in. I did hear that the contractor went out there and made those changes. I want to go back up and confirm that they were done correctly. But I also met with Commissioner Elkins and Andrew Heimert. I think it was about a couple weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago now, and we talked about some additional changes that we'd like to make on the corridor. And that consisted of some flex post across from Macomb Street, where we have a number of people parking that are going to the Starbucks, sometimes blocking traffic. Want to put some flex posts behind the bike share station at 44th Street and the parking. Other things which I put in this wish list, but also I know Christian is working on, is pulling back the parking at Embassy Park Drive. And we're waiting to hear an update on that. We just need to pull the sign back to its original location about 40 feet to the south, because residents are having a hard time viewing vehicles when they're pulling out of Embassy Park Drive. There are also a couple signs, an old bus route sign, and we talked about a bike route sign at the north of the corridor near Nebraska that would tell people as they're going on bike or scooter to take a right on Nebraska if they want to head over to Tenley Circle and use that northern sidewalk that was recently widened. We also talked about maybe adding some green paint in some of the crosswalks. I think my colleagues are a bit hesitant to do that. I'm a little hesitant too, but maybe it's something we could fold into the research project. Nonetheless, even if we are to put it in, it'd have to wait until we start doing striping work again, probably next month. So I guess that's a to be determined. I could talk about Arizona right now, or did you want to answer any questions about Tonawanda, New Mexico first?
Why don't we, if there's any questions people have about that, and Mike, thank you for really following through on all these details, but open for questions to Mike right now.
Well, the one thing you didn't mention is the crosswalk at Newark that maybe Christian is working to try to make that safer.
Yeah, no, I can definitely touch on that as if there's other questions that people are percolating in their heads, they can ask afterwards. Yeah, I know that's been elevated to Sharon. I believe she's actually been in contact with you, Commissioner, about that update. I want to say sometime in the spring we'll have it complete. I haven't received verification on whether the formal designs have been complete, but our traffic engineers will be replanting that tree. They'll be doing all the actual construction work there to make those realignments. I did also talk to them about adding a pedestrian sign in the interim. That obviously did not seem like a solution they were willing to consider. So they're just going to work on getting the construction of the crosswalk and all that redesigned finished. If I get any movement or have any intel on what dates, on what timeline looks like for you guys to share, you'll definitely be in the loop with that. And then in addition to what Mike said about the Embassy Park Drive striping piece, I have been in contact with our street and bridge maintenance supervisor, who was the one who originally told me that in the next week or so, last week, that we would have that pushed back. So I'm waiting to get clarification on what the team's capacity on that is to do. I've been told that even when it comes to removing striping, that asphalt temperature for winter weather can actually have still an effect on the removal process as well as the installation process. So I'm sure there's been some weather concerns with that, and unfortunately that has played a role in some of the delay. But I've been continuing to get emails from the constituents and then who have been looped in with Councilmember Furman's office about some of that traction. So I'm really hoping that we could get that fixed ASAP. Mike, I don't know if the striping team will be in charge of removing the sign and relocating that. I don't know if that's all in their purview. I know FOB installs the signage, but I'm not sure if your contractors will be as part of the scoping list that you mentioned, if that's going to be part of their job. But I do want to make sure that there's coordination between there, so we don't have a sign that's not placed where a new striping was removed or vice versa.
Right, let's
It'll be
coordinate
good
that.
to get the Embassy Park thing fixed. We keep getting these emails. You keep getting these emails that suggest every one of them seems to end with a sentence, or put it back the way it used to be. And I'm thinking,
Yeah,
oh, you don't know what you're asking for. That's quite a heavy lift.
yes, and I feel like I've definitely articulated the benefits of the project. Of course, you and the ANC and the committee have been very supportive of that. So I'm really just trying to stay focused on the actual maintenance there. We're not going back. Rest assured, there's no major change that this progress is going to be for nothing. So thank you for mentioning that.
Okay, any other, thank you. Any other questions on New Mexico and Tunlaw, that route?
I'll add my thanks to Mike for persisting on all these little punch list items. I did notice at least the Park Mobile signs were up that we had talked about at where the meters
Oh, great.
I guess aren't going to be installed. Mike, Chuck, maybe should I take the opportunity to ask the question you and I were trying to puzzle over, which is you had sent us an email about meters, and we were a little confused as to what the takeaway should be. Our understanding is DDOT is no longer installing single space meters, the like traditional ones, the little, the metal things, and you're only installing multi-space meters now. But you also won't install multi-space meters unless there are at least 5 to 6 spaces that they would serve.
That's what I heard, yes, from our curbside team.
Okay.
Yeah.
So people just have to use Park Mobile then for any of those timed spaces that are being set up or have been set up or will be set up on 44th.
Yeah, I guess Park Mobile, because otherwise the nearest actually multi-space meter is about a block away.
Yeah, right. No, and no one's going to do that,
Yeah,
right? I mean, I
right.
just didn't know if that was we were trying to understand exactly what was being said, and it sounded like, yep, you just got to use Park Mobile.
Yeah.
I don't personally have a big issue with that. I'm sure there are some that do. I will note that for something like 30-minute parking, Park Mobile charges like 30 cents for each transaction. And if you're parking for 30 minutes, that's about $1. It sort of takes a big chunk of what you're paying for the parking, but that's sort of the contract that you guys have, I guess. So
Yeah, I'm afraid that we're going to end up with a lot of people violating that. And that sort of defeats the whole purpose of the 30 minutes. So I don't know. Well, we'll just try to make it work.
Make it work, yeah. Okay, Mike, you had said you could also talk about Arizona Avenue.
Yeah, Karen gave me a quick update on Arizona Avenue. She had mentioned the signals are under construction and that actually some of you may have seen that and taken some pictures and had some concerns about the poles maybe not being in the correct locations. Specifically, I believe there are some smaller poles that we put those audible pedestrian push buttons on for someone who is sight impaired, that they would come and push it and it just activates the audio for when to cross. It wouldn't affect the actual crossing time or when that occurs. But she did confirm that they are in the correct locations. So everything's set there. The only other note I
did go
had,
down yesterday afternoon. I went down and actually looked at those and took some pictures, and it looked like the access to the crosswalks, particularly the part that with the slope, in the curb, was unimpeded. So that was the concern before, that there was going to be access, but it looked pretty okay to me.
Yeah, I was there 20 minutes ago with our dog, and there were some crews out doing work. I think if you're getting calls or comments, it's because it's unclear what's happening. There's you can't tell what it's for yet. Not that we should, but that may be a source.
Yeah, I think Mark Maves had also flagged this, and I think the actual concern was I mean, at least Mark Maves knew, and I don't want to speak for him, but that they might narrow the sidewalks for strollers and wheelchairs in certain ways. Not that they would block the ramps, but that it sort of leaves only what Mark Maves, maybe 3 feet or so, or whatever the width of one of those concrete squares is to get by, which is probably enough, but not generous. And I don't know, Derry, you had to look at it, so you may have a better way.
I
You
mean, it
can
wasn't,
elaborate more.
I kind of shrugged. I thought, well, that's adequate. So, I was glad about that. Mark.
Yeah, I guess it's a question of those people who are visiting the site as opposed to those who use the site. On it, you'll notice that most of the posts are actually in the line of the sidewalks themselves, in some cases, absolutely right in the middle of them. And I understand the need to help there. I guess it's a question of where those are located on it, and note that in other parts of the city, they aren't necessarily put right at the ramp, and they are put at an adjacent post, of which I have a whole bunch of pictures of. But I think this is kind of a conversation we might carry online. But considering the number of people who use it, usually in multiples of people, whether they're families or pairs of couples, or students that are biking to work, the large number of families that go to Key School, those actually obstruct that passage. So I guess it was a question of the design. And then in those cases on the two western intersections, they are impediments of a greater size because they narrow the sidewalks that people can use to get around those posts.
I see. Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Um,
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
difference between what is designed engineering wise
mhm.
and their correct locations according to those drawings, which I suspect is true. It's they don't seem to be engineered to the situation as opposed to a standard.
Right. And in your pictures, did you provide to Karen, or if you could provide to us,
Sure, be
just so we
happy
could
to.
have a look and maybe
Yeah, I
what
mean,
might be preferred?
yeah, I mean the posts are already essentially in. The bases are all in, but I also, and so I think it's that western side that's a problem. That's most. I also thought it a little bit ironic that rather than put them on the posts, all of that trenching that's been gone on is to take a wire from that post to put it somewhere else in that area.
Okay, well, we may want to continue some of this offline and
Yeah.
sharing.
And I'll, if I can find the right place to send them, I can send the photographs.
Okay, thank
I
you.
guess to Karen, yeah. So, Mike, you want to keep going on Arizona? I know that the construction of the bike lane is scheduled for not too long from now. So can you tell us more
Yeah,
about that?
yeah. Basically, with the bike lane, what we prefer to do is wait until all of the signal work is done before we put it in. Otherwise, we put in the bike lane and we put some barrels in or something to show that it's not open, but people tend to use it anyway. So we're hoping the signal work will wrap up. The notes that I have that it might not wrap up until the end of March, the signal work, depending upon weather. It could be much sooner than that. But in March, that's about the time that it's warm enough consistently when we can start striping bike lanes. So we'll probably get started doing that sometime in March. And we can reach out to the ANC when we get a firmer handle on when that work would begin.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't predict it would take more than a week or so. Could be a little bit longer. As you saw with New Mexico Ton Law, maybe the construction itself wasn't that long, but then the follow-up and
Yeah, I imagine the process will be very similar.
yeah, very similar.
Anything else you wanted to say before we open up for questions, Mike?
I think that's it for my update.
Okay. Any questions for Mike on Arizona Avenue? And by that, I also include just other parts of, lower Arizona, if people have questions about that too.
Like
Okay.
Nathan
Nathan, I
Barbour.
see you with your hand up. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. First, thanks so much for this committee and everyone with the city who's worked both in New Mexico and Arizona bike lane. I know for the Arizona bike lane, my son's excited to start riding his bike to school. My question is to the lower part of Arizona and the connection to the Capitol Crescent Trail. I think everyone wants the bike lanes to be as useful as possible and get as much use and have as much utility. I think that's a big gap, and I think everyone recognizes it. But the timelines I've seen put that project off multiple years. So I was wondering the thoughts on that is and the possibility of expediting some of that work. I know there's complications with national parks or whatever getting involved, but I'm thinking if that bike lane's as it's opened, making that much more useful, so it actually connects to more things. And I think that connector to Capitol Crescent's also for anybody walking or hiking or anything. As anyone knows, it's been down that before. It's pretty treacherous, especially if it's wet at all, to even walk down some of those steep areas. So anyway, that's my question as it pertains to the bike lane, but I appreciate all the work that's been done to date.
Yes, and thank you. The latest update I have on that connection from the bike lane that we'll be putting in on Arizona Avenue to that connector to the Capitol Crescent Trail is there was some archaeological work done, and we're still waiting on the State Historic Preservation Office to approve that before we can move into design work. So we have it on our list for this year to begin construction, but I don't know if that will actually occur this year or it'll be next year. I would need to check with Karen. And of course, some of these approvals are a little bit out of her control right now and taking longer than we anticipated.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's consistent with what she's told us before.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think she was suggesting it would happen this year.
Okay.
It was going to be design. I mean, look, Nathan, I think that the folks on this committee and the ANC have been pushing that connection as much as we can, and it's been. I think it was in the letters supporting the Arizona Avenue bike lane for much the reasons you state, which it would greatly enhance connectivity and the value of the Arizona Ave bike lane to be able to connect all the way to the CCT. So we're certainly aware. We've been pushing DDOT. DDOT is constrained by this environmental review that's going on, and then there'll be I guess from what Karen said, the design process will begin. I guess this summer if the Environmental and State Historic Preservation Office comes through. I mean, I would. Christian and Mike, just because you're the folks from DDOT, I would encourage you to the extent possible to start lining up that design so you can, you don't waste a bunch of time between, getting the approval and then getting a contractor for the design and then starting the design. The sort of those gaps really introduce a lot of delay, so that the extent that you can start that work now, with the expectation that there may be some tweaks you need to make, but if you can get contractors lined up and get them thinking about it even before, I think that would be great, just to keep things moving.
Yes, certainly.
And Mark Blumenthal.
Thank you. I'll be super brief. Thank you, Nathan. I just wanted to say I don't know how old your kids are, but I'm sure there are first, second, maybe third graders at Key School who were not born when people in this community started pushing for that connector, and the resulting bureaucratic delays are infuriating to all of us, but they're what we have to deal with. On a constructive note, to to Mike and Christian, if there is anything DDOT can do when the construction happens to, I mean, even a sign that says future site of the Capitol Crescent connector, or something like that, so the community knows it's just not dead ending there. You know, but for all the various budgetary and other delays, this thing would have been finished years ago. So, you know, anything we can do to just, like I said, a sign, a notice, something along those lines would be great.
Yes, thank you for that. And something we're trying to do on our future projects are to actually put up signs and have a little QR code. We're working on a website that the QR code would go to with more project information. So that would be a good place to try this out.
That's good. Yeah, no, thank you.
Any way people can read it from their cars without pulling up the phone to
Right,
QR
right.
code.
I do also want to add to Mike's point, part of our revamped public involvement plan that we've been working on and adjacent to the director's office. As part of future projects, we're also trying to capitalize on additional funding to get larger signs, kind of directional notifications for just people really being aware of what's happening across the district. You see some of those for like major capital projects, but we're trying to actually create a funding system where we can have them for our lower level, smaller scale projects as well. So I would encourage you to be on lookout in the future for any exciting new wayfinding and awareness work that we're doing with some of our projects.
Well, good. That's something I think we can support you on, Christian. Thank you. Okay, and one last question for Mike, and that is I'm hoping that fairly soon you'll be able to get going with a little group of people who have from this committee who have agreed to help you on the evaluation of the New Mexico project.
Yeah, I think what would be helpful for me is maybe we schedule a meeting date where we could get together. I will be collecting counts at one location on New Mexico and one on Tunlaw in April or May. But I think it would be helpful for us to get together and kind of discuss what we think we can achieve with the analysis and what should be in the report, what would be useful to everyone within the kind of constraints I have and constraints maybe the group would have together.
No, that's great. And you know who they are and you've got all their email address.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Have at it. Thank you.
Okay, I'll set up maybe a poll like you do, Terry, ahead of the meetings for some potential dates.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Mark Maves, I see you got your hand up. So one last question from Mark. You're on mute, Mark. You're on mute.
On it, Mike, just two questions on it. And you probably have gone through it before, but what's the reason for making that connection to the Capitol Crescent Trail from the bottom as opposed to the top? Wouldn't it be easier from the top and less damaging to that corner?
What do you mean by top?
Instead of cutting into that hillside and building a ramp, you simply go to the right and just simply go up the street to Potomac and then drop down from there.
It's a pretty serious drop down.
And it's a pretty serious drop up.
Right. But I like cliff down.
Yeah, exactly. It's a cliff. I've climbed it.
No, I don't know what the design does though, in terms of how much you are having to cut the rock away to do it the other direction. So I'm perplexed because we see other ones that are done on rock faces. And are we needing to tear up as opposed to build down?
So
I mean, I've taken the trail both directions, so I appreciate the topography.
Yeah, and that's a question I probably can't answer since I don't know if it's a right-of-way concern or a physical challenge.
Yeah.
Or maybe they found something in the archaeology that they need to go around.
I think there is a right-of-way concern on Potomac Avenue because I feel like I looked at it. But it's also, you know, if you from where Potomac Avenue starts, it's about the same level as the CCT. So you wouldn't have a significant up and then down to get to it. But I mean, I think all of these are questions that when the design process gets moving, we can obviously ask about, I think. So.
And the other question I was going to ask is there any movement forward to kind of straighten out or clean up the connection to the Capitol Crescent Trail from Norton alongside the water treatment? Because that's the one that I have used.
It's still on our project list. I know it did get pushed back because we had thought we might begin it, I think, a year or two ago. So I don't know the current timeline for that, but
Yeah.
we
I
still
was
have
curious because
intention of
that's a
doing
whole
it.
lot easier than the other one.
No,
Anyway,
we're going to keep asking about that one.
Yeah, you
We've
should.
been asking about it for years.
It's not an either or. It's a both and.
Yeah. Okay. Well, no, thank you, Mike, very much for what you've had to tell us here, and Kristen, for you chiming in and making some valuable additions here. And I know, Kristen, there's some topics we're going to be covering during the rest of this agenda, so I hope you can stick with us. But thank you, Mike, very much.
Yeah, thank you all.
Yeah. And we'll help you get a camera if you need to.
Thanks.
Wanted to just take a few minutes to say a thank you to the people who, there are 4 people from this group who testified last week to the DC Council a committee on transportation, etc., whatever it's called. And those were Chuck, Tricia, Andrew Heimert, and Mark Maves. And I want to give each of you just a moment to not to read what you have already given us and what we've distributed, but just to see if there's anything that you want to follow up on from what you said there. Also, to tell you that tomorrow, Quentin Cullen Roosevelt is going to be testifying before the same committee when they talk about WMATA, and he said he'd be sharing his testimony. I don't think he has it done yet. And George Saboris is going to be talking later this month on to the DOEE oversight hearing about stormwater issues. But and so thank you to you guys too.
I might have to say something.
What? Who was that?
Tricia, I think.
I think she came off mute accidentally, but
Oh, okay.
That's exactly what happened. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I just thought I'd give a minute or two to each of the 4 who did testify last week. If you want to say anything in the nature of follow up on the testimony that's already on your testimony that's already been distributed. Chuck, do you want anything to follow up on what you would say?
I only listened to about a couple of hours of this hearing. It went for 14 hours or 12 hours or something. It's really ridiculous.
Whole hearing, not your testimony.
Full hearing, right? Not my testimony. I would have been glad to talk that long. I found it very different from previous years. A lot of people, at least when I was listening, were bringing up safety issues, as opposed to in the past. It's like, well, why don't you pave my street, or put a stop sign here, or whatever. And that happened to tie in with my theme that, as I indicated, I don't think that the culture of the department is really safety first, and that is a problem. And I think it's reflected in the testimony on the sidewalk, broken sidewalk issue. I think the chair was very much agreeing with the 3 of us witnesses, myself and Capitol Hill people, about the need to do something about the speed with which broken sidewalks are fixed. Director Kirschbaum indicated that it might cost as much as $95 million. We need to get into the bottom of that. That going from $14 million to $95 million to fix sidewalks a little quicker seems, there must be something else built in that number. So we have to figure that out. And we do have the budget hearing coming up. The other issue that I raised that we may want to take up separately in another meeting is, and maybe the Christian actually could shed some light on this, is the Vision Zero staff is moving to the office of the mayor, which I would guess the rationale is that Vision Zero is not just a DDOT issue, and it really needs to be coordinated at the top of the executive branch. So that makes sense. But what worries me, and I don't know the implications for this, is it leaves DDOT without a Vision Zero staff, which doesn't help change the culture toward putting more emphasis on safety. So I was suggesting that they take a look at replacing that staff with a slightly different function. They wouldn't be looking across the government, they'd be looking just at DDOT. We do need to worry about the budget hearings, and Christian, do you know whether they've been scheduled? I have not seen any schedule for the budget hearings, but they probably will be in March.
Yeah, I think there's sometime next month. If I get any intel, I know our policy and legislative affairs team is hyper aware of scheduling those, so I can ask and get any confirmation.
So I will be having offline discussions with those of you who testified to talk about where we would go with the budget hearing. But overall, I thought that I didn't hear Mark testify. I read his testimony; it was excellent. I did hear the others, and I think we made a good showing.
Well, thank you, Chuck. Tricia, do you want to just reflect at all for a minute on the hearing?
Can I be next? I'm just getting into my house.
Okay, fine. I'll
Right.
skip you, and we'll come back to you. Andrew Heimert.
Sure, I think I managed to work all three of my points in the previous discussions. One is connectivity and focusing on that. Two is streamlining the DDOT processes, so you don't have sort of dead periods as things move forward between design and contracting and installation. And then doing studies to see how things work out in terms of usage on bike lanes. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And Mark.
Yeah, no, it was the typical concern about the infrastructure for electric vehicles. This was highlighted a little bit more by the fact that a year has passed since a bill was submitted and never followed up on. But more importantly, the pace of adoption has dropped in the country fairly dramatically, enough so that a number of the companies are now cutting back on both their production. The dealers are asking for hybrids, and that was covered as recently as today by the Los Angeles Times and by the Wall Street Journal. So the issue is still there if we want to encourage it. The other aspect that is a little concerning to me is there's a fair amount of federal dollars on the table. And the NEVI program, which is the highway program, which covers a little bit of the city, is now finally underway 3 years after it was supposed to have started. And the staff at DOOE are saying they're still waiting for guidance on the other program now, a year and a half later. So we've got money to help on that and help on our environment here in the city. Anyway, that was a topic.
Oh, thank you.
Did you get any response, Mark, from the council members? I know there were 120 witnesses, so most people didn't get comments, but did you?
No, unfortunately not. I was at the end and they were just trying to get through the schedule.
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you for being there, though, Mark, and for putting in those words. Tricia, are you able to talk?
Yes, I'm not going to have my camera on and for a few more minutes, but
that's all right.
I testified on a very niche issue on the public space encroachments that we're seeing all over the neighborhood, particularly on streets where there are no sidewalks. And we're seeing retaining walls, grand stone steps, pillars, you name it. Pretty substantial fences, and I was complaining that DDOT is not policing this correctly, and that we could likely get the Department of Buildings involved too, because most of this is happening with new builds. And it's a recent problem, probably in the last 6 or 7 years. And Matt Fruman's office later reached out to me. I had a conference with someone from his office on Tuesday, and this is sort of a separate issue. It turns out that there is a neighbor in Ward 3 who is going around reporting fences that never got a public space permit going years back. And people are getting notices from DDOT that they're in violation. And I do know of 4 neighbors in Palisades who recently received infractions for fences that they've had up for 15 years. But I was speaking to them about that, and those neighbors are going to have to come up with something. But the council member and Charles Allen were both very interested in keeping the right of way free and clear on streets that have no sidewalks on either side of the street. So I think we're going to, I'm going to be pressing this issue, trying to fix the problem with someone at DDOT, and also roping in the Department of Buildings to keep an eye out on the public space and make sure that there are permits being pulled, because it's preventing our sidewalk network from going in. It makes sidewalks very expensive.
Tricia, I saw another case of that, and it's on Foxhall Road, sort of across from the George Washington campus, just south of Phillips, whatever that Phillips development is. And it's maybe 2 feet from the road. And so I wrote Landsman, David Landsman, and I said, "Is this yours?" And what's the situation? And he says, we're not in public space and we do have a permit. I mean, it was a friendly reply. I'm just shortcutting it. But so that's a case where he thinks he's got a permit and he's not in public space, but boy, there's no room for a sidewalk. Now, maybe,
I wonder,
Chuck, are those 3 houses that came in for a curb cut?
right? It may be that Foxhall Road doesn't have any right of way.
I think he's right, Chuck. I raised that with the house further up the street too. You may recall that there's basically extremely minimal right of way along Foxhall for a sidewalk. It's like 2 feet, 3 feet, and then they've got telephone poles in that space. So it's a problem for any kind of sidewalk, but that's what it is. And unless for Foxhall, the only solution would be for the ANC only to agree to things like curb cuts if the property owner gives over a little land, I think.
Mm-hmm.
wow. So I haven't looked up any of the, if anyone has an address for any of those, I can look up the plats and see where the property line is. Because Foxhall in particular is not pleasant to walk on. There's no tree box on the side that actually has a sidewalk. And then the other side, everybody's privacy walls are 3 feet from the curb.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'll look up that address for you.
okay.
It can be terrifying to walk along there.
Anyway, DDOT needs to do a better job of policing their public space. And I think that a lot of it goes on without DDOT being aware. And since it's mostly with new builds, I feel like the Department of Buildings should be withholding some things until a public space permit has been issued. Especially when there's no sidewalk there.
Yeah, no, I hope that becomes part of their process.
I definitely agree with you, Tricia, with all that. I know that's been a hot issue the last couple of months. Even I know you mentioned it too on the Eskridge Terrace piece with that big retaining wall that they had there as well. So I'm definitely I'm looking forward to more engagement and collaboration with DOB. I do want to make a caveat just because it's related to this conversation. We did recently add a public space inspection feature in 311, which is new. We've never had that before. So right now, the past process used to always just community would come to us on our team and we would relay it to our respective enforcement operators. But now residents can actually submit a ticket through 311 and it gets actually sent to their team. So we're enhancing that coordination process. It still doesn't address the historical or kind of generational retaining walls or fences that have been existing on public space for years or decades, but it gives us a little bit more of a better tracking system on how to manage that. So that's one step in the direction. But if I get clarity and yeah, go ahead.
I have a question on this 311 system, because I'm liking this. If you have something in the public right of way, whether it's a dumpster or you're redoing your front walk, do you have to have a permit posted?
I don't know if you need a permit posted, but you do need a permit approved, that especially from DOB. I think there's a certain foot range between the property line of the fence, how much it goes into the adjacent sidewalk, that becomes a DDOT permit. Anything interior of that would be a DOB permit. So there's there are two separate features, but it really depends on like how close they are actually abutting on public space, where our team
I know. I'm talking about stuff like so if someone sees a dumpster in the roadway and there's no permit posted, I'm imagining you might get a lot of these 311 requests because people don't know if they have a permit or not. It would be helpful, I guess I should say.
No, I understand what you're saying.
If a permit is supposed to be posted, I would very much like to know if a public space permit needs to be posted when work is happening in the public space.
Yes, certainly. I can definitely dig a little deeper on that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to try to move on now to what I hope was the area where we spend most of our time. We're a little bit running over, but not seriously. And that is these ANC3D priorities that the commission approved in January, and there are a bunch of them that have to do with transportation, no big surprise. And we've listed several of those that we're already working on or where we're trying to make some starts. And I'd like to go through those, perhaps, aiming for no more than 5 minutes each. So we're not going to try to have a full discussion of each one, just, who's going to be on this, how are you going to get going, and then we can follow up in future meetings. And then at the end, if there are some other priorities that you think should be on this list of immediate things that we're working on, that would be a good time to say, but we should add one more here or there. So the first one of these that we've got concerns safe routes to school. And there are a couple of places where the commission had said they were interested, but we thought, okay, let's start with Key School. And there we thought not only was there some good opportunities and important priority there, but there's an opportunity to try a new kind of software that might help us not only in this project, but in some other projects as well. Tricia, do you want to start by talking about the Safe Routes to School and Key School and District Engage? Tricia? Can't hear you. You're on mute.
There we go. My buttons weren't coming up.
Well, you're coming through loud and clear now.
Okay. So I know that this idea for safe routes to school, when it comes to kids getting to school safely, all of this stuff around Key is on our priorities list. And Chuck and I, mostly Chuck, have been researching these software programs that can be used as an interface between a group and the public, or can be used by a group itself. And we have gotten approval from the entire ANC Commission to engage with this group called District Engage. And there you can set up all of these little projects. And I spent about 30 minutes on this software. They gave us a little demo test, and I made a little project so people can see what the capabilities are. It's by no means polished, but it is a program where, let's say we had 7 or 8 people working on this Safe Routes to School. We could put things out to the community. We can survey them. We can have people, we can have idea boards where people could come back to us and say, hey, I see this as a problem in this morning, like the directional traffic is a nightmare. I wish my kid was able to bike. All of the bike racks are on the wrong side of the school. Like any of these ideas, we could use this software to bring a plan together, and then we can use this to lobby DDOT to get things done or work with the school to, help make things better. Does anyone, Chuck, do you have anything you want to add? And then I thought we might be able to show it to people.
I think of this as a two-way conversation. It's all the other techniques we have are one-way communication. We send people something on the listserv. They send us an email. It's not a very good communication system. This platform attempts to have essentially more like a two-way conversation with all the hopefully advantages of that, and hopefully not too many disadvantages. So we really want to try it out. So I think you should show them what it looks like, because I see this maybe being used in lots of different ways over the next year. We will contract for a whole year here.
Chuck, are you thinking about doing a demonstration right now? Is that what you want?
Let me see if I can.
I'm just thinking about time. If we want to take a good while on this, maybe we should.
No, I think she can show it about 3 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. I need some, oh yeah, here's permissions. Okay, here we go. Okay, so if you can see my screen here, this would be ANC projects, Transportation Committee projects, and you can see they've, the group has populated this with some other projects that are going on, but this would be a page with our projects. And I created this Safe Routes to School, so people would be directed to the project page. And you can see I have a little overview here. We can do surveys and put this out to the key school community. We can do polls, like I created this poll that basically says, please take a minute to answer this poll. I think the sidewalk system leading to Key is fine. The sidewalk system overall is inconsistent, and kids sometimes, I just made this up, but I will, submit that and we could take a poll. But more importantly, we can have these idea boards. And I haven't set this up, but you can actually embed these maps into this, and people can pin on the map, like this is an area of concern, and they can write their ideas or their comments. There's also an area where you can just write verbiage. And I think if we were going to be collecting this kind of data for this one particular community and their neighbors, I think that it might be a really nice tool. I also envision us maybe with the intersection of Nebraska Chain Bridge and MacArthur Boulevard. We get a lot of individual complaints about that. We might be able to use one of these projects to bring ideas together. And then if someone reads someone else's ideas, they can react to that idea. So you can sort of see things that might be popular or not popular, or someone might have an idea for something and it goes. But I spend a little bit of time doing this, not a lot of time. I mean, it's got a long way to go in terms of making it look pretty and all of that. But I think that it could be a really useful tool for us, even between committee members. Does anyone have any questions?
You were, I think it's a great idea to use this particular project as a first try at using the software. I think that's great. And I had down some notes that Mark Blumenthal and Andrew Davis might be working with you on this. Is that correct?
We had talked about you guys joining the committee, and I've got 3 names from Key. So we've got a nice little group that knows the landscape and cares about it.
That's great. So I look forward at our next meeting to just hear how this might be starting to come together. Thank you. Are there any other quick questions before we move on to the next one? But this is exciting. Okay. And I also think, just looking at Christian there, that this is going to be a way that you're going to be able to see some more direct input from individual citizens around the city if this gets used in more places. So this is an opportunity for you and the department to be able to,
I might just say the normal way is for everybody who's participating on this platform to see what other people are saying. So it would be a case where Christian could come in. We could say, Christian, you ought to take a look at what's going on with regard to X, Y, Z, and you could come in like anybody else, and you can say, oh well, look at this, So I think it could be helpful to the department, and you could, have your own questions, Christian. I mean, in other words, the department might say, well, boy, if you added this kind of survey, it might be useful to us to see how this direction, that we're going in this direction or something. So it's a very open process. We have to let the contract and all that, but I don't see any speed bumps from where we are at this point.
Well, thank you. Let's keep moving. The next topic on our list here was traffic calming on MacArthur Boulevard. I had down that just several names: Andrew Davis, Mark Maves, Tricia Duncan. There might be some others who had expressed an interest in this earlier. George, I see your hand going up. And I don't know if any of you wants to just say something about how you want to go about this, or ask for any particular kind of help. But I throw the floor open to any of you or somebody else who wants to talk about this subject.
I just have a few words I could say about it. I remember as an alum of the University of Maryland in College Park, we have Route 1, which is a big commuter artery that runs right through the middle of campus. If anybody's familiar with it, you have the campus on the south side and then Fraternity Row and some other place on the north. And it was a constant battle with them because you had so many students crossing the commuter artery. And MacArthur, for a lot of people, is somewhat of a commuter artery as well, not really in the size of volume of Route 1. But it would be worth, I think, a good idea to look into some other, and I'd be happy to do this, other areas around the city that are dealing with a similar kind of circumstance. I think we briefly discussed Route 7 through Falls Church, where it goes from which is also a commuter artery that goes from about 35, 40 miles an hour down to 25 when you go north of Seven Corners. Another high volume area, but right to smack dab through a residential area. And just to find out ways to slow people down. I mentioned I did a drive along with Officer McElway some weeks ago, and we sat in the median in an unmarked car and watched as drivers regularly exceeded 50 miles an hour. I mean, they were just flying through, and where I live at MacArthur and Macomb, just a little further up from downtown Palisades anyway. And it was like shooting fish in a barrel, the number of speeders that they had. It was really, I got to use the gun. It was a lot of fun. But so something, I think there's a lot of things that we could do. I think there's a lot of work to be done in this area, and there's a lot of ways we could, I think, slow traffic, and I think we need to. So,
Andrew, as you get going on that, I recommend that you contact Jack Wells, who is unable to join us today because he had a doctor's appointment following up on some knee surgery that he had, so he didn't really have any choice about being here or not. But Jack would probably be somebody who could could really help you on that.
Okay, we'll do.
And Christian, maybe as this gets underway, you and your colleagues may say, "Oh, this sounds like what we DDOT did over on such and such place." You know, maybe some. Andrew mentioned situations outside of our jurisdiction, but there may be ones where DDOT has already worked on a certain situation like MacArthur, where it's sort of a commuter area, but you've also got a lot of pedestrians and other activities. So let's watch for some maybe help from the department in identifying other people that we might want to talk to.
Yeah, definitely. Appreciate that.
16th Street has some characteristics of this
Mhm.
along, you know, the sort of more residential parts.
Mhm.
I know for Nebraska Avenue, which I think might be the same classification as MacArthur, we did post an NOI a couple weeks back of changing that speed limit designation from 30 to 25. So I think over time, as we like look at the capacity of how the streets function and really know that 25 is a pretty, I mean, once we did it on Connecticut Avenue, it's kind of been proven that that's a good kind of low-hanging fruit first step for us. So if that's something that we could also consider, I actually don't know if it's already 25 on MacArthur,
I believe it is.
but if we can look at some additional changes in that manner, I'm happy to entertain that and be an advocate for you guys, of course.
Yeah, no, that'd be great, Christian. Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the first things to do, though, is to take a hard look at the whole length of MacArthur, which differs in various places, of course, and see what are the problems that our residents are saying. This is a real problem here, and it's different from over there, et cetera. I mean, it's not like just a couple of blocks. We're talking about what, I don't know, mile, 2 miles. I don't know. I'm not a good judge of distance, but this is a case where this platform of engagement may help us as well, to have people tell us,
Mhm.
well, I live over here on this part of MacArthur, and let me tell you what it's like.
Well,
Absolutely.
I can see that this is going to be a project that you know, takes a while to see through to fruition. However we want to measure that, and I don't want to start too many things right away with district engage, but since you have a fairly long route with a lot of you know, different people living there and traveling there, it as maybe the second thing that that we use district engage for, you may want to think of this one as another one, just because of the just the extent of interest among people on that. Mark.
Yeah, I live on one part of it, so I only have one observation. But the speed that seems to be for us is the area where the boulevard is. And if you start to go more toward Foxhall, because there's a lot of stuff going on around you, it's a tighter street, there are lights on it, there is by the water area, there is a speed camera. Things seem to slow down a lot, but the higher speeds, and what I don't understand is, with McElwee, why isn't somebody there regularly enough? Not all the time, but regularly enough, randomly enough, that people know that something might happen. And if you go the other direction and you're coming into the city, there's a speed camera that gives tickets. So, and why not?
Well, Mark, surprisingly, we were set up literally a block away from the existing speed camera, which is a block in from Dale Carlia and Norton. So even people, you know, they pass the camera, they don't know it's there, and they just floor it and kind of like accelerate through that after they get past it. I can only assume. Imagine those machines are still racking up a lot of tickets, but when I was set up with Officer McElway, we were just a block inbound from the existing camera. So it's some, I think we need to look at the entire thing and how to do kind of a consistent thing that's going to slow people down throughout the. I think the cameras are great. I think they do slow people down, but I think that they start to learn where they are and they accelerate around them and slow down to avoid the ticket. There used to be if people may remember that terrific sign as you turned left onto MacArthur from De La Carlia, or I'm sorry, from Lawborough. And it was speed is observed by radar, and it was a $25 fine or 2 years in jail, which is kind of a funny combination, kind of an either or, not very kind of commensurate with one another. But that sign's gone. Maybe we could have another one. I know there's a terrific device over on Porter Street. This might be a little extreme, but if you accelerate beyond the speed limit, it triggers a red light, a pedestrian crossing. So you're kind of forced to slow down. If you keep it under 25, it doesn't trigger the pedestrian crossing. That might be a little much, but it's pretty cool technology. If you ask me, it really gets people to slow down. Speed bumps aren't something that work. But anyway, I think there's lots of ideas that we can all, well, especially with this new software, I think it'd be great to kind of crowdsource
Yeah,
the community.
yeah. Mark, I see you with your hand still up. Is that?
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to put it down.
Okay. Well, Andrew, thank you on this one. And if you need more help, you know where to find it. Just come to us and we'll.
Yeah, no, just to add on to, this is good feedback just for myself. I know most of you are very intimately aware of our TSI process, but I know that protocol is usually designed for treatments of intersections, very hyper localized locations, right? And so when we're thinking of something like this, like MacArthur Boulevard, which is a corridor wide enhancement, I am interested in actually having some conversations with our high injury network engineers that work in our Vision Zero office, but they have a program called ASIP, which is our annual safety improvement program. So it's like a team of engineers that do quarter-wide assessments, and they look at treatments on larger scales. It's a different bucket of money, but it's all really part of our whole engineering safety goals. So I'm interested where this might lie in that. If they've had a study, if they plan on doing a study, what that treatment looks like. I can definitely initiate some of those conversations just to see where we are at to get the ball moving in different areas. Because I know the TSI process, unfortunately, in Ward 3, as much as I try to educate your constituents and everyone else on like our protocol, I understand that it's a very limited process when it comes to this part of the city with our new model. So trying to articulate better ways on how we can actually make improvements in the ward, but also use the existing system we have in place.
Christian, one of the things coming out of that, of your examination of that with the high injury network people, is what kind of data is useful to begin to understand a corridor. Some of it, of course, needs to be the data needs to be collected by professionals, but some of it, as you were just hearing in this conversation, is also anecdotal, which helps us begin to understand what's going on at various parts of MacArthur. And so if there are data points that the neighborhood could begin to collect, maybe through this new platform, in which we could then make a case that this would be a great place for a corridor study, that would be helpful, I think, at this stage.
Yeah. That's a good idea. And Andrew, as you get going and you've got Mark and Tricia and George, I'm glad you have the connection with Tony McElwee, because to the extent that you can have him as part of your brain trust there, I think that that would be particularly useful. He's probably got lots of insights.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, he knows the whole corridor like the back of his hand. He's been controlling it for decades.
He's interested. I don't know how much his time allows him to participate in anything, but he's definitely interested.
Yeah. Well, it's what that may mean is he can't attend too many meetings, but he can certainly, have phone calls and share emails and stuff like that, because he does have insights, obviously. So thank you. Let's move to the third one on this list, which is sidewalks, gaps and new sidewalks and cracks. And there I want to turn to Chuck, and as part of what Chuck will talk about, there is a draft letter that circulated the other day that you may want to have out as Chuck talks. So Chuck?
I think, given the timing, I think maybe we'll take comments offline on that letter unless people have some immediate things to say. But just generally, DDOT has this fantastic new dashboard on new sidewalks, and it's not just bells and whistles. It's actually a program in which these gaps are prioritized, which is great. And it's actually being run by Karen McAllister, whom we know. And we asked two things. One thing of Karen, and she offered the other as well. What we asked for was how did they actually grade some of the gaps near the old Safeway site, so we could get a feeling for how the scoring was done. And secondly, she opened up the possibility that they want to review the scoring criteria this spring in order to see if it can be perfected. And so she's open for suggestions. And that's what this letter is trying to respond to. It's saying, we took a look at this from a neighborhood point of view, and we have these suggestions. And you'll see that one of them is that if you live, as we do, many miles from a metro station, they shouldn't give you 1 point for that. The points should go to 0 once you get to be about a mile away. And you think, well, is that sort of trivial? No, it's not trivial, because of the way the points build up and where you end up on the list. But also we add in other kinds of places that people walk to besides parks or schools. People walk to commercial areas like the area there on MacArthur. People walk to the library. They walk to the hospital. Seniors are going to be walking out of the new Fitzgerald or whatever. Is that what we're now still calling it, or has it changed again? Whatever the name of the continuing care places, seniors are going to be walking out of that and walking to it. So that's what this letter does, and I would really appreciate people providing me some comments, because I think it would be good for ANC3D to send this in at our March meeting, which is March 6th, and that's coming up soon. So does anybody have anybody had a chance to look at it? It came out sort of late for this committee, so I apologize for that. Any comments at this point? This is important to our community, because if you look at the map that's on this dashboard, it's populated with all the gaps. And boy, our neighborhood is, maybe we may take first prize for having the most gaps. We certainly are within second place. And so this is important. Now, I realize there are a lot of people and a lot of streets where the neighbors don't want sidewalks, and I'm not sure, given the pedestrian traffic, that we need sidewalks there. Pedestrian and traffic and vehicle traffic, that we need sidewalks on absolutely every single gap. But we certainly have some gaps, for instance, around the Fitzgerald, around Key School, where we do need them, and they're not coming out very well on the scoring. So they're not going to get built unless the scoring is more representative of reality, of what I believe we would consider to be reality on the ground. So what I think we can provide to Karen is, here's a check from those of us who are on the ground. Do we think that the criteria could be more representative?
Okay. And Chuck, while you're talking, do you want to also just cover the restriping issue?
Well, one of my recommendations was that every single year that the district ought to just go, the DDOT ought to go visit every single crosswalk and see whether it's fading. And it shouldn't have to wait for neighbors to say, you know, this crosswalk is fading, I think I'll report it. I mean, that's going to be waiting a long time for those kind of 311 reports. So I think the department needs to do that. So that's a simple recommendation that we made in the testimony.
And one of the things that you and I had talked about was an effort by people in this group to compile at least a starter list of places that do need attention.
I think that's right. I think that a concerted effort by, say, our transportation committee would in fact generate the 311s. My comment earlier was just the random across the city that people don't think about reporting fading crosswalks. But I think this, just like we did on some broken, damaged sidewalks, we submitted hundreds of those 311 requests because we had members of this committee walk our sidewalks. We could do the same thing on the crosswalks.
Yeah. Mark Maves.
Yeah, first of all, I want to say that DDOT has done a great job on cleaning things up for the length of MacArthur Boulevard between roughly the lab school almost to the hospital, although we still need that last block. And it was done about the time of the parade. So a remarkable amount of stuff was done happily. I have a sort of broader question. All of us are asking for things. Maybe Christian can give us some sense of that. The city is having a horrible financial problem. They're going to reduce staff at the schools. Christian, correct me on this, I had understood that one of the ways for DDOT to reduce their budget was to simply not fill the positions that were vacant. I know that's true for sure at DOOE on that. So where are we? I mean, should we not pick one or two topics and push it as opposed to shotgun it under this situation? I mean, it's just a strategy question.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a good question. I don't think I have the capacity to answer it right now, but I do know that, you know, in terms of the budget shortfalls that we are experiencing, you know, we're trying to find ways we can still be action oriented and really deliver for what we do have. We've been asking council for additional funding for probably since we were founded in 2002. So every single year, you know, it's always a game of chicken or the egg of how much we're going to get and what needs to be reduced for that. So I can't really talk on the strategy piece, but I do know that our leadership is acutely aware of some of the challenges that not only our agency, but other agencies across the district are having. And we're trying to make the most of the resources we have. Many projects we want to get funded are not even on the fiscal year plan for like 2028, 2029. So we're also still trying to leverage ourselves on what we can actually fulfill capital project wise, which are, you know, is big scheme, but I know there are other issues much more localized that we're really trying to hone down onto, but definitely probably more of a Moker's mayor's office question since we rely on them for filling our piggy bank. So
Andrew Heimert, I see your hand up.
Sure. It's coming back to Chuck and the repainting crosswalks. Fully support the idea. I wonder if it might be done in a somewhat less burdensome way to DDOT, if there's sort of a knowledge of how long pavement markings tend to last, and maybe it could be done on a cycle where, you know, DDOT does wards, you know, 1 and 2 this year and 3 and 4 the next year, or, you know, some sort of cycle like that, just to reduce the burden, because obviously not all of them are worn out every year, but the broader point is certainly an important one. I agree with it.
Yeah, well, I certainly wasn't suggesting that they repaint them every year.
No, but even the survey.
Just a survey. But I agree with you. I mean, we have to be practical. And if it means some wards this year and some wards the next year, if the markings last that long, then maybe some special visits around schools and this sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah.
Sort of thing. I just want to comment though on this issue that we have a tight budget. One project that I have in mind to do, I have not done, so I'm not sure I can pull it off, is to take a look at the service level agreements, they're called, which are like the 270 days to do a sidewalk fix and 3 days to do a pothole, to take the two extremes. But they have about 15 or 20 of these, which essentially drive a lot of the priorities. If I read correctly, the street paving program hit 120% this year, And I'm wondering whether it's not reflected in the SLIs quite that way, but the other documents that they sent in. So, I mean, maybe there's a rebalancing within the department. I, of course, have a safety view, so I would probably balance them according to my judgment about what they had to do with safety. But I think in tight budget years, it's good to look at, revisit where one's putting one's priorities. And this department is still quite vehicle oriented. It's moving elsewhere, moving in other directions, as we all know, with bike lanes and all that. But it's still very much vehicle oriented.
Yeah. Now, Chuck, on these various crosswalks and sidewalk issues, do you have notes on who might be working with you on this, or do we need to ask right now for people who want to?
I think
directly with
I
you.
don't think we need other people right now. I think we can move ahead as we are, but there may be, if we wanted to organize a walking tour of our neighborhood to find the crosswalks that need to be repainted, that would, of course, involve a lot of people. Last time we had 5 or 6.
Anyone who wants to help Chuck on those things, please get in touch with them. Now it's 4:24, and we've got 2 more topics that we'd like to get through. Plus, we wanted to ask if there are other things that people want to put on the list. So let's move fairly quickly. I'm not going to, break everything to end at exactly 4:30, but trying to get as close as we can. Bicycle paths and connectivity, and Andrew Heimer. We were one of the things that we had been hoping to do for some time, and we've been making this point to the department over and over, is about connectivity. And about a month ago or so, you had an idea that maybe we should be talking also with Michael Alvino at DDOT, who is new in his position. I don't know if you want to try to organize something on that, or if you have other ideas on how we ought to get make our next push on connectivity.
Sure. No, I mean, look, I think there were, if I remember back, the genesis of that request came out of last year, where we were trying to set up that. But I think we outlined a bunch of priorities. We, the ANC, so not really we. Chuck is the we.
It's a big we.
But I think one of the challenges we've had is, one, knowing where things stand, where they're going when they're not actively going, and then the other is getting DDOT to think about things before they sort of come with a fully baked plan to sort of talk through. I think that particularly applied to the challenging stretch of how do we connect Arizona and New Mexico for bicycles, and that intersection at Foxhall is a challenge no matter how you do it. The sidewalks got constraints, the street has constraints. You've got hilly terrain in other directions, parks in other directions. So just sort of having a chat, what might be possible, that kind of thing, to get some thinking going, and maybe some studies going, so we can have a better picture of what might be possible.
Okay, well, maybe we should be talking about this next month.
Well, I think a meeting with Michael could be not necessarily in the context of a full transportation committee meeting.
Yeah.
It might be more productive if we just do sort of a small
Get a
group.
couple of you together. Okay, well, happy to talk with you, offline about, anything you need on that. Thank you. And then finally, on stormwater and the DDOT Spring Valley Stormwater Green Infrastructure Project, and George Saboris and Tricia Duncan and Chuck Elkins have all been involved in this in one way or another. So this is an ongoing project. George, do you want to just say a little bit about kind of where we are and what the next steps are?
Sure. Just to remind, we had three issues on this. One was the sort of regular flooding on Dale Carlia, which I think we kind of understood and agreed we would try to address bilaterally with DDOT by finding the right people. Then the second issue was maintenance of the bioretention facilities that quickly turn into weed patches. And finally, putting bioretention facilities on streets, and in particular one street without any sidewalks on either side. So there's been 2 steps forward, it's fair to say, though not much progress overall. The first step was we were invited to a get together with the DDOT director, Kirschbaum, and ANC3G, and DOE and Chairperson Krugman showed up. So it was kind of a high level meeting where about 40 to 45 neighbors of that neighborhood showed up. Chuck and I were there, but we were definitely the minority, and so we were kind of listening in to kind of get a sense. The tone and the sort of substance of what the neighbors were all about were: 1, we didn't know anything about this until very late. 2, we hate having parking spots taken away. 3, you're putting them in the wrong place. 4, maintenance is a problem. So there was a lot of animus vis-a-vis the project, and is it close to 100% completion? Why are we so far ahead when you really haven't listened to us? We did speak a little bit about Rockwood, but it wasn't the right environment to get our particular point across. I do understand that ANC3G had a special session exactly on this, and some draft resolution was being discussed and possibly approved. I don't know what happened. I looked at their website today and it didn't show anything about a resolution coming out. So I don't quite know what they came up with in terms of their response to the project. The second step forward was on Tuesday, immediately thereafter, Councilperson Truman's office organized a meeting of DDOT, DOE, and Tricia, Chuck, and I were on this Zoom call. And we took the time to kind of better understand how the maintenance process works. And the way it actually works is these are basically DOEE projects. They have the money and they sort of pass them on to DDOT to actually do the construction and take care of up until the point of being ready to bring forth to the public. So basically DDOT has a contractor, the contractor does the construction, but they are also responsible for planting the plants and giving them 6 months to kind of thrive. So at that point, DDOT signs off saying this project is finished, and then it goes back to DOE, who are technically responsible for maintaining these over the long term. However, they don't have money for this or enough money for this, and they're asking for more money. So in some sense, the system works, but in substance, it doesn't work, because we do see most cases where these things look abandoned and full of trash and they're pretty, but also equally importantly, not very functional, because the plants serve a purpose in kind of absorbing this water. It did seem to me that the money issue was kind of a big problem, perhaps not the only problem, but certainly a big problem. And this was going to be part of my testimony in this upcoming thing, saying, look, if you really want these bioretention facilities to work, you have to put money for maintenance, and so on and so on. So we'll see what comes out of that. On the Rockwood issue, or Rockwood Parkway issue, which is the bioretention facility squeezing the road and forcing people to face a long, narrow road stretch, they did listen to us. The project manager's boss was there. She did acknowledge that this might be something we would relook at or look again. In fairness, we haven't heard back, And so I don't really know whether we've made any progress or it's just another one of these, iterations where we bring up all these points and they say, yes, yes, we hear you, but then nothing happens. So that's kind of where we stand right now.
No, well, thank you, George. And this is an ongoing thing, and I'm sure we'll be doing a couple things between now and the next little while, and talking about it probably next month. But meanwhile, thank you for testifying at the hearing. When is it? End of next week, I guess.
29th, 27th, something.
Yeah, so about 2 weeks from now. But any other comments, questions on this one? I know we're a little over, but I don't want to shortchange this one. We don't have to.
Can I
George?
ask whether, Christian, do you know anything from the project team? I mean, you were present at this Zoom call, and my sense at least was that they had heard and they were going to look, and maybe we would get some feedback.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think they're still, well, I know the redesign process, the current design plans that we have, they're undergoing modification. What that looks like across the board, I'm not sure of, but I know our engineers are working to make any tweaks. Regarding Rockwood Parkway, the latest that I've heard, it hasn't really been confirmed, which is why I haven't shared it yet, but I think they are considering doing some kind of sidewalk path that is not like a full sidewalk, but it's more of like a landing platform, like behind the facility. So if pedestrians are walking in the middle of the street, they can use that as like a way to go around the facility. But I think they're still working on how they can fit that into the budget of the project. And I don't know if that design scope has actually been facilitated, but that is an option that Julie, who is the project manager's supervisor, kind of leading the project, is actively considering, knowing that there is, that kind of stress pinch point with the pedestrians using that heavily used street. So if I get more details, I'll definitely share it.
Yeah, I mean, we
thank
really
you.
liked we felt like the best solution across the board was likely to be the sort of permeable bricks or membrane or whatever it is that they would put, which would do the job of water absorption, but also not squeeze people. But this other sidewalk potentially could be also good.
Yeah, I know. I think there are just significant challenges with maintaining that flexible pavement piece that I know was discussed. And while it would be useful as an alternative from the bioretention site, if we already are constrained with how our maintenance project is going to be down the line, we don't want this particular portion to just kind of get more disheveled over time, and then we're constantly going back every other year to kind of resurface that and whatnot. So we're definitely trying to find the path of least resistance, but we also do recognize that there are substantial concerns that you've raised, so that those are being considered.
Yeah, no, and just looking at the maintenance down the line, that has got to be part of the decision making here about how soon to add more facilities to the ones that are already there and that need a lot of maintenance work. So you can't think of those things independently and simply keep adding new ones without considering the maintenance budget. So and that's something we have talked about. But thank you on that, and this one is again to be continued. Now I want to ask a question. What we've just done now is we've talked about I don't know, 6 or 7 projects that we have going, and it feels like a fairly full agenda. I mean, we're trying to pick off some priorities from that ANC list, but I feel compelled to ask, are there any others on that list that we should be putting up to work on now, or do you feel comfortable with this list? I don't want us to be overworked, but I don't want us to be ignoring something that should be on this list.
I mean, not that I know of. I mean, I think the list you have is very comprehensive. Do keep in mind there are multiple divisions responsible for various issues here. I mean, between crosswalks and bike paths and stormwater, like those are just, it's not housed under one entity. So there is going to be cross-divisional conversations with each of these components, while also keeping in mind that, you know, we try our best to really kind of put our resources across the city. And I know that there are a lot of concerns in Ward 3 as your liaison and as an advocate, but also as kind of the face for you guys for the district. You know, I kind of play both roles to be, you know, gung-ho for what you want to see in your communities, but also try to be as resourceful for what we can provide across the board. But a lot of these issues you have on the list do touch every aspect of Vision Zero, safety, they're all intertwined. So finding cohesion would be useful as we move forward.
Well, we're trying to keep the whole department busy.
Well, you've definitely kept me busy with my either unfortunate or fortunate expanding roles of responsibility here in the team. You definitely you definitely make every day different, but it's always good. I don't mean that in a malicious way at all.
No, I take it in the spirit with which you offer it. Nick, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to make my personal pitch of how disappointed I am to see the timeline on the Arizona Ave Bridge replacement and the associated trail work continue to slip. And my understanding is that that's now been pushed to 2028, which, you know, having followed this kind of stuff for a long time now, I recognize that that is essentially equivalent to never. And I really wish that we could do something to get that moving a little faster.
No, certainly. And I know the council member Furman also, you know, articulated that during the hearing. We've received tons of feedback with that. I think if we had the opportunity to move it sooner, we would. But if there's any traction I hear on terms of updating that timeline, I'll let you know. My understanding is there's a lot of headway with NPS being involved, a lot of cohesion with other factors related to the implementation of that. So not to sound like a broken record or kicking the can down the road, but there is those continuing conversations we want to make sure happen. And we feel the same. We would love to have that bridge project completed much sooner. So we'll only time will tell to see if we were able to enhance that further, but I appreciate you bringing that up.
Well, thank you, Christian, and thank you for all the different topics on which you've supplied information this afternoon. We really do appreciate it when you're able to be part of these meetings.
Christian, I don't think that Arizona Bridge and Trail implicates the NPS. I think it's just inexplicable why it is a 4-year project from here when I mean, you know, the bridge itself, I understand some construction challenges, but the plan was a prefab bridge, which gets manufactured somewhere and then craned in and popped on top of some concrete pediments. And then the rest of it is, you know, grading and paving. And I realize it can't happen overnight, but, you know, it's like 2 years just to get a contractor and designs that should have been done 7 years ago. It seems like there's a lot of unnecessary slack in there.
Well, I apologize. I maybe misspoke because I think I was conflating the trolley trestle.
Yeah,
bridge,
no, yes,
which
the CCT connection is also very slow, but it's not 2028. We think it's the Palisades, the Arizona Bridge and Trolley Trail that I think Nick was referring to.
Right. No,
I mean,
2028.
The Georgetown trestle, I would also love to see. I realize that is a more complicated project, but yeah, I'm with Andrew. And it's one thing to say it's going to be a long project, but the longest journey begins with a single step. And if we just keep putting off the start of the project, well, yeah, it never gets done.
And can I just add, when the preliminary design was presented to the community in January 2020, there was a timeline on that slide that was 2 years long, that included 1 year of final design and 1 year of construction. So somehow now that's 4 years.
Yeah.
It's a little hard to reconcile.
That is useful perspective, Mark. You're exactly right. Okay, it is now 4:42. I'm unless there's something that somebody really has to share, I don't want to run too much further over, just because we know that particularly during the afternoon, that people's time is valuable and they do have other responsibilities. So are there any other closing questions, comments, what have you? Chuck, have you got anything that you want to say at the end? Guess not. Well, thank you, everybody. This is quite a good conversation we've had. We've covered an awful lot of subjects, and I think got quite a few things that different people who've been with us this afternoon are going to be working on. So we'll meet again in about a month, and keep going. So
Thank you, Derry.
thank you. Have a great afternoon.